Hello everyone and welcome to another really wild game. It's from round 3 of Meltwater Champions Chester Finals. Magnus Carlsen versus Maxim Vachier-Lagrave. It features a very cool line of the Sicilian and a very new move early on as of move 7. So without further ado, let's check it out, and we're probably going to cover a bit more games today. So Magnus with the white pieces opens with e4, and both Magnus and Maxim had won both of their previous matches, so let's see what happens in this one. We have c5. Of course, when you play Maxim and you play e4 as white, you know that there's going to be a Sicilian on the board. But now Magnus doesn't go for knight f3 and d4 and goes for some sort of an open Sicilian. He plays knight to c3. He goes for the closed Sicilian. So d6 and bishop to b5 with check. We have bishop to d7 blocking check. Magnus captures and Maxim captures with the queen. And now knight to f3, preparing d4 now. We have knight to c6, and only now Magnus strikes in the center with d4. Maxim trades, we have captures, and now the position has been reached before, and known moves here are g6 and knight to f6. But Maxim plays e6 now very early on, and it is as of move 7 that we have a completely new game. So while this opens up the d7 square for the dark square bishop, it also weakens the d6 pawn. So it's a question, maybe this bishop should have been just fianchettoed here, or should you allow this pawn to remain weak on d6, or are you maybe playing to just pushing it to d5 and open up the position? As we know, this is always good for black most of the times. So here b3, Magnus says, alright, this bishop will be incredibly useful on this diagonal. Bishop to e7 and bishop to b2 now. We have knight to f6, and now Magnus plays queen to d2. He wants to castle queen side, as Maxim is most probably castling king side, since the c pawn is missing. The black king would be kind of vulnerable here. So here Maxim just castles queen side. He says, I don't care about king's safety, let's play a game. Magnus says, alright, he castles queen side as well, and now Maxim just advances the pawn to d5, and his idea is very, very clear. He just wants to trade everything off the board. The idea being that if Magnus captures, we would just see a nice capture fest here in the center. Captures, queen captures, and now after knight captures on c6, you could keep the queens on the board with some like queen captures on c6, but also just trading is perfectly fine. Captures, recaptures the knight on c6, and that's it. We have this endgame where the material is completely equal. White can't really capture on g7 because the rook attacks the bishop, then picks up the g2 pawn, so nothing really happening here. Yes, white has 2 pawn islands against black's 3 pawn islands, but in this position where there are bishops and both pair of rooks on the board, doesn't really matter all that much. So here after d5, Magnus just moves the queen to e2. Now he says, alright, let's open up the position. Now my rook is nicely x-raying your queen on d7, and now it's sort of a dare towards Maxim, because if he goes for the plan, which is knight captures, rook captures, and e5, point being that if Magnus moves the rook, Maxim will just push the pawn to d4. Magnus would just give up the rook here. Point being, after knight captures, we would play knight captures on d5, and now for the price of the exchange, we have a monster knight on d5. Point being that there's no c pawn or e pawn. You're not going to be able to kick away that knight. Black doesn't have a light square bishop, so you can't oppose that knight with a light square bishop. Your only hope is to at some point move the queen and trade this rook for a knight, because this knight, if it remains there, there's just nothing for black to do. It's just a monster knight. So at some point, white will play some like king to b1, c4, and then if black even trades, you will get a nice passed pawn here. White should always be better. Of course, objectively, it's probably a drawn endgame, a drawn game, but of course, Maxim will not allow Magnus to play this. So he attacks the knight one more time, bishop to c5, and now Magnus just trades. Knight captures on c6, queen captures, e captures on d5, knight captures, and now rook captures on d5. And now both Maxim and Magnus seem very happy here. Maxim, especially since he got rid of the tension in the center, and now Magnus can go for something like queen to g4. Now it's a question whether this can be played or not, and even though the engines like it, Magnus decides that it's not worth it. He plays f3, and he says, alright, let's trade everything here. Now my queen is guarding the g2 pawn, so I will be able to capture here. but that's actually not true. So here, Maxim played f6. He wanted to remove this threat of just bishop captures on g7, but you can play rook h to d8. It's a super fun line, so I will show it, because if bishop captures on g7, now you have bishop to a3 check. And now you have to play king to b1, and for the price of one pawn, you have a very decent game here as black. Your bishop is very active, the rooks are nicely doubled here, the queen also on a very nice square. The problem is if you play bishop back to b2, queen to c3 wins, because you can't capture due to check, and if you capture, or if you don't do anything, you're just getting checkmated, and if you capture the bishop, queen to a1 will be checkmate. So maybe rook to d8 instead of Maxim's f6 here, a slight improvement, but okay. We have f6 by Maxim, and now Magnus trades. Rook captures on d5. Maxim doesn't want to create 3-pawn islands, so he just captures with the queen, and now Magnus brings the queen into the game with tempo. So queen to d1, rook to d1, obviously attacking the queen. Sometimes I just say things that aren't there. Queen to c6, getting the queen to a safer square, and now a4. Now Magnus wants to grab some space on the king side, on the queen side, and improve his position as much as possible. And you can't really go rook to d8 just yet. It seems like this move completely equalizes the position. The problem is Magnus could just capture it, king captures, queen to d3 check, and pick up the h7 pawn, and that's not something you want to do. So first we have king to b8 by Maxim, and now king to b1. Both players are just bringing their king to a safer square, and now e5 by Maxim. We have queen to d3, now saying, alright, you didn't bring a rook into the game, you're definitely not going to bring it into the game now, and I'm preparing queen to d7 at either trade queens, or I will have insane pressure along the 7th rank. So here, Maxim tries to figure out how to prevent this. Is there a good way of doing this? Now, bishop to b6 is one nice way of doing that, because then you can play rook to d8. But he tries bishop to e7. It's sort of a similar idea, and it even comes with a trick. Now, if queen to d7, now you just play rook to d8 and black wins. There's really not much for white to do here. If you trade queens, first we grab the rook, of course, and only after the king moves or bishop blocks, then we capture the queen. And now even a bishop to a3 is a threat, so white is completely lost here. But Magnus takes advantage of this, and he plays queen to f5. Now he says, I'm bringing the rook to d7, not my queen, and then this bishop will serve as a target here. This would not be possible if the bishop was on b6. So here we have a6 by Maxim. Just retreating maybe with bishop to c5 would be a better move, but the bishop just came from c5, so that would be like admitting your previous move was a mistake, and chess players never admit that. So here Magnus plays h4. There is a better move here in the position, but Magnus said after the game that he only saw it after he played h4. So we're gonna first play h4. Magnus wants to grab some more space here on the queen side. We have h5 by Maxim, and now comes the move that Magnus could have played earlier, and that is of course rook to d7. It's a really deadly move, not just because it attacks the bishop, but for a lot of other reasons too. Maxim, of course, defended the bishop, but now the game is completely lost for him. So feel free to pause the video for the first time and win the game for Magnus while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting the double attack. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, of course, it's bishop captures on e5 with check. And it doesn't matter what you do here. If you capture the bishop, of course, we deliver another check, and now we're attacking the bishop twice. So it's 2 pawns for free. After the king moves, we just pick up the bishop, and we're up 2 pawns. Of course, this is completely winning, regardless of whether black trades rooks or not. If you trade, of course, then it's a queen endgame, where white is up 2 pawns, and if you try something like this, the threatened queen captures on c2, it doesn't really matter. We can just play anything really here, defend mate, and we're still up 2 pawns. We're going to win this easily. So after this bishop captures on e5 move, Maxim played king to a8, but now there is one particularly deadly move that ends the game on the spot for white. So feel free to pause the video for the second time and try to find this idea while I give you a couple of seconds as usual. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding, well, bishop, just moving the bishop to, to a safer square. You've just won a pawn. Obviously, that's fine, but there is a much deadlier move. So congratulations to everyone who found that. You are an excellent spotter of even better moves. That, of course, is rook to c7. This is what Magnus played, and it was in this position on move 26 that Maxime Vachier-Lagrave resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Once you move the queen, or if you just capture, then of course white is up a queen. But if you don't, if you just move the queen, doesn't really matter where you move the queen. If you play something like queen to b6, we just deliver this check, and that's it. If you capture, then we just capture with check, king moves, and then we're just gonna play bishop to b8 check, and then deliver mate in 3 instead of 1 move. Or we can play queen to b8 check and deliver mate in 1 move. Or if you don't do this after rook to c8 check, you could just move the king right away, but then the rook hangs. But we don't even have to capture it right away. Bishop b8 check, king to 8. Now we can capture on e8, and now we're threatening all sorts of nasty discoveries. With best play, it would be something like mate in 6 for white. So of course Maxime sees this, and after rook to c7, he resigns the game. Great start for Magnus. Like I said, both of them won their previous 2 encounters, so this is a big fight for both of them. We'll see if Maxime can get back into the match, and will he equalize. Once again, hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Joseph Conrad, John Sved, Haskomar, David Kimura, and myself for making great videos. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. We're gonna keep covering this event. See you soon.